My name's Isabel, I'm 35, and for the past decade I've been the family ATM with a pulse. It wasn't always like this. I used to think we were close, the kind of family that joked around, looked out for each other, celebrated birthdays with bad cake and worse karaoke. But somewhere along the line, that changed. I got a job straight out of high school, skipped the whole college route, and somehow still managed to build something for myself. I started in construction, got my contractor's license at 25, and after years of learning the market, something clicked. I shifted into real estate investment. Properties poured in. I didn't just survive, I thrived. And when the money started flowing, so did the calls from home. It started small, a couple hundred here, a car payment there. Then came the credit card debt, mom's dental work, dad's truck, my sister's art supplies. And my sister Meredith, she always needed just a bit to hold her over. She was the golden child, even after dropping out of art school twice and quitting 3 freelance gigs in a row. But every time she crashed, the whole family acted like it was a fluke, like Meredith just had bad luck and I had extra to spare. I never really pushed back. I told myself it was fine, that helping family was what you did when you made it. But over the years, I noticed something. Every thank you got shorter, every request got louder, and somewhere along the way, thank you turned into finally. It all came to a head at Meredith's wedding. Now, I had already spent a ridiculous amount to make that day happen. My parents' guilt tripped me into it slowly, like boiling a frog. Just help with the venue became, well, we can't do flowers without the photographer. Then the cake's not included in catering, and finally it's Meredith's big day, can't you just cover the rest? And I did. All in, I fronted exactly $100,000. And no one asked me once if that was okay. They just expected it, like I was paying back some invisible debt I owed them for daring to make it without a degree. The wedding itself was beautiful, I'll give them that. Big vineyard property, sunset lighting, string quartet playing a soft instrumental version of Can't Help Falling in Love. Everything looked like a Pinterest board exploded in real life. But even as people clinked glasses and danced under fairy lights, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't really there. I wasn't listed in the program, wasn't seated near the bridal party, wasn't even asked to speak. I chalked it up to Meredith being overwhelmed, or so I told myself. Then came the speeches. My dad, already a few drinks in, took the mic after the best man. He wore that smug half-smile he gets when he thinks he's being clever, and he looked directly at me. We always knew Meredith would find someone special, Dad began, slurring just slightly. She's got talent, beauty, and now she's finally settling down. As for Isabel, he chuckled, letting the silence drag. Unmarried, uneducated, but hey, at least the checks are good. The room erupted in laughter. Not awkward chuckles, laughter. Even Meredith laughed. My mom covered her mouth like it was all in good fun. The groom, Cameron, smiled politely but said nothing. And I just froze. I stared at them from my seat. I don't even know how long. I was too stunned to be embarrassed, too numb to be angry. And then something in me snapped, not like a sudden outburst, but like a string being cut. Quiet. Final. I stood up, walked to the front, and took the mic from my dad. He tried to hand it to me like it was all just a friendly jab, but I didn't look at him. I looked at the crowd. You know what? I said, voice calm, too calm. He's right. The room quieted. That's exactly what I am. I'm just a wallet, not family. I turned to Meredith directly. You know that $100,000 wedding gift? Forget it. You could hear a fork drop. And before anyone says it was a joke, let me remind you, jokes usually come with a punchline. That was just you laughing at the woman who made this all possible. Cameron opened his mouth, probably to smooth it over, but I wasn't done. I turned to the guests. I spent the last 10 years making sure this family didn't fall apart. Paid off debts, kept the lights on, covered every emergency Meredith created. And in return, I got silence, I got eye rolls, I got treated like a donor instead of a sister. So enjoy the wine, the sunset, the string quartet, because this is the last check any of you will ever see from me. And then I handed the mic back to the DJ and walked out. Behind me, I heard whispers. Someone gasped. My mom called my name, not angrily, not even in protest, just surprised, like she honestly didn't see this coming. That was the moment I realized something deeply unsettling: they really didn't see it. None of them thought they were doing anything wrong. To them, I was just fulfilling my role, the good daughter, the one with deep pockets and no backbone. But I was done playing that part. What they didn't know yet, and what would make the next few days very interesting, was that I hadn't just paid for the wedding. I had access. I had receipts. I had leverage. And I had already made a few quiet moves in the background, moves that would leave them scrambling, confused, and for once, completely on their own. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove to a hotel downtown I'd already booked the night before, a quiet corner suite away from the noise, the congratulations, the fake hugs. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and watched the city lights blink on one by one. I should have been angry. Maybe I was. But mostly I felt empty, like someone had been slowly siphoning pieces of me for years and I just now realized the tank was dry. I scrolled through my texts. A few missed calls from my mom, one from Cameron, none from Meredith. She was probably still celebrating, assuming I'd cool off by morning and quietly foot the rest of the bills. That was her pattern: mess up, wait it out, rinse and repeat. But this time, I had a different pattern in mind. The first thing I did was open my laptop. I logged into the shared account I'd created for wedding expenses. Yes, shared. When the planning began, I made an account under my name with both Cameron and Meredith listed as authorized users. Why? Because I wanted a paper trail. I'd been burned too many times covering things off the books. This time, I wanted transparency. Meredith's dress, charged to the account. Venue deposit, charged to the account. Every bouquet, napkin, and drunken groomsman's suit rental, all mine. But here's the part they didn't know. I didn't just fund the account, I controlled it. Every transaction, every payout, every transfer, it all required my final approval. And I hadn't cleared the final balance yet. So I didn't. Instead, I paused all outgoing payments and set a freeze. The venue hadn't been paid in full. The caterers were still waiting. The string quartet, half paid. It wasn't petty. It was practical. If I wasn't family, if I was just a wallet, then let's treat it like business. And when the respect dries up, so does the funding. I stared at the "Are you sure?" confirmation screen for a long minute, then clicked yes. The second thing I did was message a lawyer friend of mine, Victoria. Smart, sharp, and twice as ruthless as I was when she got fired up. I told her everything: the funding, the contract, the insult, the freeze. She sent me back a laughing emoji and said, "Give me a day. I'll make sure it hurts, legally, but politely." That was the start. The next morning, my phone buzzed at 6:13 a.m. It was Mom. "Isabel?" Her voice was raspy. "Where are you?" "Why?" "Well, Meredith's saying something happened. She said you made a scene." "No, Dad made a scene," I responded. I could hear her exhale slowly, like she was trying to decide how to play it. "Sweetie, you know how he is. He was just joking. Don't call me sweetie." A pause. "Okay," she said, more cautious now. "Look, tensions were high, but we can talk. Meredith's hurt, Cameron's upset. I'm not your bank anymore." Silence. "I'm serious, Mom. I'm done. You've treated my success like a shared family resource and my life like it's secondary to whatever disaster Meredith walked into next. That ends now." Her voice cracked just slightly. "Are you really going to leave your sister high and dry on her wedding day?" I smiled bitterly. "I already paid for the champagne. Seems like a fitting toast." I hung up. By noon, the text started. Cameron first: "Hey Isabel, can we talk?" Followed by "I didn't know he was going to say that. I'm so sorry." Then Meredith, just 3 words: "We need you." That was rich. They didn't need me the night before when they were laughing in a circle like I was the butt of a sitcom. They didn't need me when they left me off the seating chart. They didn't need me when they booked a $6,000 honeymoon suite in Santorini on my card. Oh yeah, that was next. I called the travel agency I'd booked the honeymoon through, because of course they had delegated even that to me, and cancelled everything. The deposit, non-refundable. The rest, unpaid. By 2 p.m., I got a call from Meredith. She didn't open with hello. You canceled our honeymoon? Yep. You're being insane, Isabel. That was low. You can't just. I didn't. You did, when Dad humiliated me and you laughed. You know what he's like. Yeah, I snapped. I do. That's why I'm finally doing something about it. She started to say something, but I was done. Meredith, I gave you everything. And every time I did, you treated it like it was owed. You treated me like a backup plan. So here's the new plan, there is no backup. Figure it out. I ended the call and muted the thread. Then I took a deep breath, leaned back in the chair, and let the silence settle around me. But the fallout, that was just beginning. Because I hadn't just frozen payments and canceled travel plans. No, I had one more piece of the puzzle to play. One last move that would shift the ground beneath them completely. A move tied to the house. Not the one I lived in. I kept my space modest, a 2-bedroom penthouse, modern, quiet, just enough room for peace and a home office. I'm talking about their house. The one my parents had gifted to Meredith and Cameron as a wedding present. Except here's the catch, I was the one who bought it. 3 years ago, after Dad's heart scare and Mom's surgery, the pressure started to mount. They said they needed to downsize, claimed the old house was too much, too far from hospitals. The mortgage was behind, so I stepped in. Bought the place outright, cleared the debt, even had the deed moved into a trust, one I managed. They lived there comfortably, rent-free, under one condition, no major changes or transfers without my approval. Fast forward to the month before the wedding. One night during dinner, Dad casually mentioned that they were thinking of gifting the house to Meredith and Cameron. Start them off right, he said. I thought he was joking. Why would you do that? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Well, Mom said, buttering a roll, Meredith's starting her life, and she needs stability. Besides, you've always said you didn't want the house. That's because I own it, I replied slowly. It's not a hand-me-down. I paid for it. Dad waved a hand. Semantics. It's all family. I should have stopped it right then. I should have been firmer. But part of me, the stupid, loyal, still trying part, thought it was just a thought, a conversation over dinner, not a plan. Turns out, while I was funding a wedding, my parents had started paperwork behind my back. They didn't tell me because they assumed I'd come around. They assumed, like always, that I'd keep paying and smiling. But now it was time to educate them. Victoria came through the next morning. She sent me a neat 2-page document. It outlined exactly how the house was tied up in the trust, how no transfers could legally happen without my signature, and how any unauthorized attempt would not only be void, it would also be fraudulent. I forwarded it to my parents with no message. Just the PDF. It took 38 minutes for Dad to call. You think you're being clever? He growled, skipping the greeting entirely. You're going to humiliate your family over a piece of paper? No, I said flatly. You already did that last night. There was a pause. You always take things so personally, he muttered. And you never take anything seriously, I snapped. You stood there in front of everyone and called me a checkbook with legs. You all laughed like it was true. So now I'm just living up to the role, shutting it closed. You're being dramatic. No, I repeated. I'm being done. I hung up. 10 minutes later, my mom texted. It was long, rambling, a mix of guilt-tripping and half-hearted apologies. We didn't mean it like that. You know your father's sense of humor. Meredith was just nervous and went along with it. Cameron feels awful. Please don't punish everyone for one moment. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the phone and made another call to the trust manager. I asked him to initiate a notification process, send certified letters to my parents, Meredith, and Cameron, informing them that the house would remain in trust and any attempts to occupy or alter ownership without permission would result in legal action. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about sending a message. A final message. But I didn't stop there. Because if they thought the wedding fallout was bad, wait until they realized what I'd done to the business fund. See, last year Meredith came to me with what she called a can't-miss investment. She wanted to start an art studio, Nothing fancy, just easels and canvases and a coffee corner. She had no plan, no partners, no experience, but she had the confidence of a woman who'd always had a net beneath her. Still, I gave her $40,000. With a contract. I told her I wasn't giving her the money, I was loaning it at 0% interest, generous terms, and repayment deferred for 6 months. She signed the contract with a flourish, like she just autographed a masterpiece. She never paid a cent back. And I never pressed it. Until now. That same morning, I had Victoria prepare a letter of intent to collect, full amount, 30-day notice. Failure to respond would result in civil litigation and seizure of assets tied to the LLC she'd lazily set up under her name. Was it harsh? Maybe. But after years of being their fallback plan, I finally realized something: they'd never change if they didn't have to. And for the first time in my life, I was giving them no choice. By the end of the week, the calls had turned frantic. Cameron left me a voicemail, his voice strained. I didn't know they'd done that. I didn't know about the house or the money. I swear I didn't. Please don't ruin our lives over a joke. Meredith's a good person, she looks up to you. That one almost got me. Almost. But I remembered how he laughed, maybe not loudly, but enough. Enough to stand beside them, not with me. So I didn't respond. Instead, I called the bank to review my auto payments. One by one, I shut them off. My parents' car insurance, the utilities, the phone plan I'd quietly been covering for 3 of their lines, my mom's recurring pharmacy charge, Meredith's business card, Cameron's student loan. Yes, I'd been helping with that too. It all stopped. And as the silence stretched into days, then a week, I started to feel something new. Not guilt, not spite, relief. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with 10 demands waiting in my inbox. I didn't brace myself every time the phone buzzed. I didn't feel like my success was a shared pie everyone else got a slice of while I cleaned up the crumbs. But deep down, I knew the silence wouldn't last forever. And I was right, because last night, someone knocked on my door. It was close to 10 p.m. when the knock came. Not a soft tap, but a firm, deliberate 3-hit rhythm. I was halfway through a documentary with my phone on silent and a warm mug of tea in hand. I muted the TV and just waited. I live in a secured building, and nobody just shows up. Not unannounced, not at that hour. The knock came again. I stood slowly, set my mug down, and walked to the peephole. Meredith. Of course it was Meredith. She was dressed in that same vintage blazer she wore to every gallery opening she never actually exhibited at. No jewelry, hair messy, like she'd driven over in a rush. She looked not angry, but rattled. Her eyes were red, not from crying, probably from exhaustion or stress, and she was gripping something in her hand. A folder. I didn't open the door. Isabel, she said, raising her voice just enough to be heard through the wood. Please, just 5 minutes. I didn't answer. She stood there in silence for a few seconds, then sighed, leaned forward, and rested her forehead on the door. I messed up, okay? I messed up. Still, I said nothing. I thought I could fix it, she muttered. I thought if I handled the honeymoon stuff, or talked to Dad, or made Cameron reach out, something would give. But it's just... Her voice cracked. It's just all falling apart, Izzy. I leaned my head against the door too. We were inches apart, separated only by a slab of oak and a decade of resentment. She sniffed. They're panicking. Mom's having these dizzy spells. Dad's pretending like he's not worried, but he called me 3 times today asking if the notice was real. Cameron's been staying with his parents because he's embarrassed. The studio is. She trailed off, then let out a weak laugh. I'm behind on rent. I don't even have clients, just 2 commissions who won't stop texting me about deadlines. I tried to sell the easels from the studio to cover utilities, but it turns out they were all on payment plans. I didn't move. Not yet. Then came the softer tone, the one she used when we were kids and she got in trouble and needed me to cover for her. I know I don't deserve anything from you right now, but I thought, maybe you'd want to see this. She held the folder up to the peephole. It's everything. The wedding budget, the statements. I annotated what came from you, what came from us. Cameron didn't know most of it, he was told your gift was just the catering. I didn't tell him about the rest because, I don't know. Pride, maybe. She lowered the folder. The studio, the papers, the lease. I wrote a letter too. It's probably pathetic, but it's in there. I didn't want you to think I didn't care. I did. I do. I just didn't know how to show it without looking weak in front of them. There was a long pause. I looked up to you, you know. Still do. I got used to everyone else acting like your success wasn't real because it didn't come with a diploma or a husband. But it was real. You made it real. And I was jealous. That's the truth. Jealous you didn't need their approval. Jealous you didn't need mine. I finally spoke. Leave the folder. She hesitated. That's it? For now. Another long silence, then a quiet okay. I heard the rustle of paper as she slid it under the door. When I opened the door a few minutes later, the hallway was empty. Just the folder, resting against the frame like a white flag. I carried it to the kitchen, flipped on the light, and sat at the table. I didn't even touch my tea. Just opened the folder and started reading. Meredith had, in fact, gone through the effort. There were spreadsheets, receipts, handwritten notes, little yellow tabs sticking out with scribbled explanations. This was Isabel's, forgot to thank her. Dad insisted on this overpriced. Cameron thought this was from his parents, my fault. And then the letter. It wasn't long, barely a page, but it was real. No fake apologies, no excuses. Just an acknowledgement. A raw, fumbling attempt to admit fault without groveling. Meredith wasn't good with words, but the guilt was there. The shame. And maybe, buried deep, a flicker of actual remorse. Still, a letter and a spreadsheet don't undo years of being taken for granted. They don't erase the fact that she laughed when Dad mocked me. They don't magically refill a well that's been bone dry for years. But they were a start. I placed the letter face down and leaned back in my chair, and then my phone buzzed. It was an email from the venue coordinator. Subject line, urgent, payment dispute escalation. Apparently, Meredith had tried to cover the unpaid balance using one of the shared cards I'd frozen. The transaction failed. The coordinator had called my office, thinking maybe I'd changed banks. She was giving me 48 hours to resolve the issue before involving their legal department. I stared at the screen for a long time. And that's when it hit me, Meredith hadn't come to apologize. She'd come to buy time. I stared at the email a little longer, rereading it just to be sure. 48 hours. Legal escalation. Payment dispute. So that was it. That was the real reason she showed up. Not to take accountability, not to finally grow up or fix anything. Just to stall. To hit the brakes before the whole thing crashed in public, or worse, on paper. And it worked. For a second, I almost believed she'd changed. Almost. I closed my laptop and pushed the folder away like it was something rotten. The numbers, the letter, all of it suddenly felt hollow. Strategic. Just another Hail Mary to save face while still clinging to the same entitlement that had been choking this family for years. And I was done letting it wrap around me. The next morning, I called the venue coordinator. Hi, this is Isabel Knox. I'm the original point of contact for the booking. Oh yes, Ms. Knox. I'm glad you called. We've had some issues with payment. I'm aware. And I'm here to resolve it. Perfect, she said. So should I reprocess the... I'm not paying it. There was a pause. I'm sorry? I'm formally withdrawing as the responsible party. The individuals who hosted the event misrepresented their financial position, and the account is no longer authorized for this transaction. Please forward any claims to Meredith Knox and Cameron Lane. They were the primary beneficiaries, and I am removing my name from all future correspondence. Do you understand? Another pause. Ah, yes. I understand. Good. One more thing, they tried to use a frozen card yesterday. That card was never meant for them. You should inform your legal department before reprocessing. I'll make a note of that. Great. Have a nice day. And just like that, I severed the final thread. That afternoon, I submitted the formal complaint against Meredith Studio LLC for breach of contract. The papers were ready, Victoria helped file everything. Court ready, airtight. Not to crush her, but to make it real. To hold her accountable like any adult would be. I also notified the trust manager to remove all secondary permissions from the house. No more keys issued, no updates allowed. Meredith and Cameron's wedding gift was officially off the table. Permanently. Later that evening, I turned my phone off and poured myself a fresh cup of tea. No calls, no texts, no guilt. 3 days passed. On the 4th, I got a certified letter at my office, a notice from Meredith's attorney. Well, her new attorney. A desperate bid to negotiate repayment terms and delay the lawsuit. I had Victoria respond with a single line: settlement requires full admission of responsibility and public withdrawal of all prior family claims of financial contribution. The letter she got back from them? Nothing but insults and hollow threats. That told me everything I needed to know. Meredith wasn't sorry. She was just scared. Eventually, word spread to the rest of the family. My mom left a voicemail, long, tearful, saying things like, "You're tearing us apart and this isn't what family does." My dad didn't call at all. He just sent a single text, "You'll regret this someday." I didn't reply. I saved it, printed it out actually, and taped it inside the folder Meredith left behind. A reminder of why I was doing all this. Not out of cruelty, not out of spite, but because I finally saw the truth. They weren't family, they were tenants on a sinking ship, and I'd spend a decade bailing water while they laughed from the upper deck. The moment I stopped, they blamed me for the flood. So I let the ship sink. And I walked away. It's been 6 months. The lawsuit settled quietly. Meredith paid back part of the money after liquidating the studio. Cameron left her, apparently. He found out about a few more lies tucked away between bad investments and family stress. My parents downsized again, this time to a small rental they can barely afford. The utilities, the car insurance, the phone plan, that's on them now. And me? I'm good. Better than good. I travel, I read, I laugh at stupid movies. I go entire weeks without a single phone call asking for money. I'm not just the woman who made it anymore, I'm the woman who kept it by finally letting go. And in case you're wondering, no, I don't regret it. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and pressing the like button.